Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Excited as ever to welcome you to our Week 2 athlete briefing for our Half Marathon Challenge 25. So big congratulations for anyone starting this challenge who completed their 20-minute distance test this week. You've now set the baseline for your following 10 weeks to come here. So big congrats on that. And if you didn't do that 20-minute distance test, then you're jumping right back into a progression run. So great opportunity early in the training cycle, test out your paces, see how things are feeling, kind of test that pace over different zones there. So let's do a quick week 1 review before we move forward here. So as I mentioned, we either did that distance test, we did that progression run, or we jumped straight in, or in key workout number 2, jump straight into our half marathon pace intervals. So really solid zone 3 training here. Looking to kind of practice finding that pace, holding that pace, starting to learn it a little bit, get it into our bodies right here in week 1. We've got 9 more weeks to follow to kind of keep finessing it. This is kind of our first exposure here. Naturally, finishing the week out this week, we have our first long run. So just a reminder before we get into it, this is an easy effort only run. So this is not the time, even though it's not that long quite yet, relatively speaking, where it's certainly the length of a workout that you might do that includes intervals, but this is a workout that wants to be easy, wants to really focus on that endurance zone. So a nice, easy, long run to finish out the week. Speaking of finishing the week, just a reminder to keep going into that website, check on your workouts, check on the workouts for the week ahead, but also check those boxes, chasing that 100% completion percentage. We want to make sure we keep accountable to that as we continue on over the next 2 months. Now let's go to our week 2 workouts here. So have 2 workout options for run number 1. Our workout, kind of our base workout, if you will, is just this endurance run plus stride. So we talked in week 1 about the importance of endurance running in this process, in the build to run a half marathon race. It's our number 1 contributing energy zone. So our base workout here is an endurance run plus strides. However, in the difficult kind of setting in the workout, there is a tempo workout option we'll talk about too. So what I would say in general in picking that is that for the large amount of athletes, a single kind of workout structure per week, especially in a half marathon or marathon progression, is more than enough. It allows you to really focus on getting a good quality session, allows you time to focus on the endurance work, and then naturally to get your long run in as well. You know, athletes that are especially training only 3 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week, you know, in order to get that endurance time, it is a really beneficial to set some of those key workouts out to really focus on endurance. However, if you're doing 4, 5, 6 sessions a week, if you have been doing 2 steady sessions or consistent quality sessions in your week as is, absolutely consider toggling up to that kind of second structured workout, which would be our kind of the optional tempo to this. For our endurance, for our baseline workout here, we have a kind of a warm-up, which think of this as just kind of easing in. There was a comment that came up during the week. It was kind of brought interest to me, which is, you know, what is the 10, 15, 20-minute warm-up? And it's intended to be easy running. So if we didn't make that clear, apologies, but it's intended to be easy running. So this is separate from your mobilizations, from any sort of pre-run activations that you're doing. This is just easy running. We like to think of it sometimes as just like a plane taking off. You start maybe at the slower end of your zone and accelerate up to something that you might sustain for the rest of that warm up there. So you're just kind of easing into your workup, but very much running. Now, during the course of this endurance run, there are 2 strider segments, and these strides are very important kind of tools in our runner tool belt here. And so just once again, a reminder, this is not an interval. It is certainly not a sprint. This is just an opportunity to kind of move your pace forward, kind of in the similar kind of plane takeoff and a nice smooth line analogy here. I want to smoothly move that pace forward, just feel a little bit of a challenge and then back it right down. So there's no right or there is a wrong way, but there's no necessarily right way to do this, and there's no right pace. So I always like to say that, the pace that I'm peaking at is probably going to be one that's similar to my workout. So this is kind of an easy workout day, but what we're working on now is half marathon pace, getting to that half marathon. So where I'm probably going to peak in a workout like this, where I'm using striders in this training cycle, is probably somewhere around half marathon to threshold pace. I might take it just a little bit faster than half marathon pace, but you certainly don't need to take it to 5K pace, to mile pace, where you're really going all out. There's just not a spot for that in this training cycle. So it doesn't need to be super hard. This is just a little way to elongate your stride. It's a little bit of a way to kind of break up the monotony of just like a steady state, easy run, and start to feel a little bit different. You can actually start to get a little bit kind of stuck in one motion, on easy runs where there's not a lot of disparity. And so this is just a way to kind of break that up. It can actually refresh your body a little bit, hopefully going into the next block. Run number 2. So big proponent of hill work, whether you're on hilly races, flat races, downhill races, etc. I love hill works as part of routines, especially for longer distance races like half marathons, etc. So we've kind of gotten in, hopefully in week 1, people really took the time, went in, kind of learned the lunge matrix, maybe re-familiarize yourself with the lunge matrix as that warm-up routine. It's a very good one. This will be a little bit different one, calf matrix routine. It was, I guess, kind of included in week 1 too, but it sets up a little bit differently. Even more important here, there's a lot of focus on your calves during hill running. So we want to go ahead and really prepare your body to be able to handle the demands of the workout. So make sure to spend some time really reviewing that calf matrix. Once again, coming into our warm-up, 10 minutes easy running, inclusive of a few strides to kind of get prepared for the body of activity. In our main set, we've kind of a combination of 1 minute and 3 minute intervals. We're working on incline. We're working at half marathon pace here. So these are going to feel a little bit challenging, especially in those 3 minute chunks. Why we do hill work is one, and maybe most importantly, is most courses have hills at some point. Race directors love to especially in half marathons, put one somewhere around like 11 or 12 miles into the race, like a good long climb. I don't know why, it's not what I would do, but it tends to be there a lot. Being serious though, more importantly, amazing posterior chain activators. So we want to build and recruit the big running muscles that power us both on incline, on flat, etc. By increasing the incline, we're forcing those muscles to get engaged, be part of the party. So a great way to recruit those muscles, great way to generate knee drive in terms of overall economy and efficiency. When you're going uphill, no secret, you have to be able to pick your legs up a little bit higher, generate power. Otherwise, you're just going to topple right over, which we don't want. But a great way to work on running economy is to kind of be working uphill on incline. So we'll include that without a doubt over the course of our challenge here. And to finish the week off, naturally, we have our long run where we're just going to progress a little bit. So we talked a bit about the mileage ranges and picking where you are in the range in week 1. Similarly, there will be a range the rest of our weeks as well. So you might find that your week 1 run target was too easy, too aggressive, etc. You can use certainly the kind of next week in that mileage range to make an adjustment on how you want to go about it. So no matter whether you're on the short end of the range or the higher end of the range, we'll get you there together all the same, don't worry. But that range is provided for you. Second reminder on the long runs, easy running only, not a time to include tempo, not a time to include intervals. This is not a workout. This is our nice, long, easy focus on endurance running here. Let's jump into a few questions that have come up here during the week. Question 1 was, I'm training for a half in early March and a full 2 months later. I know I should likely treat one as an A race and one as a B race. Wonder if I should be doing marathon pace training somewhere alongside half marathon paces. And so I talk a lot about B races. I'm a huge fan of B races. However, in this exact scenario, while the marathon is most likely the A race here, I almost always encourage athletes to race half marathons as part of their marathon build. And the timeline in which I usually shoot for that is 6 to 8 weeks in advance of that full marathon. And when I have them do it, it's usually as a race. Like, I really want athletes to get out, run a very hard effort in that race. I think it gives it a really great sense of how things might go 6 to 8 weeks later. And if you have that kind of timetable, in this scenario, 8 weeks, you should be able to kind of incorporate it into your training. You really can't take a taper for that half, like maybe just a couple days to rest up for it. Similarly, you can't quite take a full recovery the way you would after a key race, because you need to get right back into marathon training. However, hopefully by that point of your marathon progression, that 13-mile effort feels almost like a workout as opposed to a key race in your build there. So I think it's a great thing to include in your schedule, and the timing of it is perfect. In terms of pacing, it's going to depend a little bit. So, if I were thinking about building a program for an athlete with a half marathon 6 to 8 weeks or 8 weeks before their marathon, then at that point, you're very much already into your marathon build. So the workouts of this particular progression aren't exactly what I would be using to build a marathon plan. And what I mean by that is, when we are doing half marathon focused workouts here, it's a little bit faster pace, so the intervals are a little bit shorter. Kind of in general, you think about the faster the pace of the workout, the interval gets a little bit shorter. Marathon in particular is a little bit slower pace, so you get longer intervals, not to mention the race is literally twice as long, so you get intervals that are longer sustained tempo work. So for anyone out there that's taken part of or utilized our kind of Team Wilpers marathon plans, I'm sure you remember the week after week after week of tempo work of just steady state marathon pace. So we're not going to include a lot of that. And in training for half marathons in general, I don't see a lot of steady state half marathon pace just week after week after week, just because you're getting a little bit too close to threshold. It's becoming more and more challenging to sustain that pace for longer periods. So simply adjusting kind of pace from half marathon to marathon, et cetera, might leave you a little bit short. So I would definitely consider, kind of figuring out where you want to start your proper marathon build and incorporate half marathon work into that instead of using half marathon workouts to prepare for a full marathon. So hopefully that helps. Question 2 was how to incorporate hiking and running same distance goals to 12 to 13 miles without overtraining. Have a big hike at the end of March and some races in spring. I know there are similarities. Others then have increased use of lift your leg over the log muscles used in hiking. Any advice is welcome. So great thing to kind of say right there, lift your leg over the log muscles. Best way to get ready for that is consistent strength training, hiking in general. Not only a great part of your running routine, but an absolute great part of your hiking routine for any mountain athlete. So outside of that, I love hiking for runners in general. I think hiking is an awesome activity to include into a runner's campaign. And the reason goes all the way back to that hill workout, which is a great posterior chain recruiter. So if you're walking uphill for a long period of time, you're engaging those glutes, you're engaging the hamstrings, you're engaging the calves, you're getting a great workout on all those big major muscles that we want to build and make stronger for running while hiking. So the combo of running and hiking comes in a lot with my ultra athletes. So I was talking about it just earlier this afternoon, where we have to train for the run. We also have to train for the hike because that's such a huge part of the event. So when we think about it, we start and look at the week, and we always want to get our 3 key runs. You can't go less than 3 key runs. If you're only running twice a week, you're detraining more than you're training. And so you're going to ultimately get worse with exercise. So you have to get those 3 key runs into the week. Then when you start to add your hikes, you would come in where your supplemental workouts go. So if you would have had an easy run or a supplemental, cycling, elliptical, whatever, that's a great opportunity to put in targeted hike workouts onto those things. And so those could be actual outdoor hikes if you're getting outside on the weekend doing actual outdoor hikes. I would encourage a long run one day and either hike after, or a long run one day and a hike the next day, just so that you stayed fresh for your run. They could certainly be indoor hikes and be indoor targeted workouts. They could be stair steppers, etc. So there are a lot of different ways to go about it. So I would say the key here is you have to make sure that the hike workout doesn't start to detract from your run workout. So ultimately you need to build a lot of time on feet for those long hikes. You have to figure out how to balance that with everything else, but you want to include those hike workouts as kind of targeted sessions. If they do start to overwhelm your running workouts, you need to dial it back, and that could be less duration, less incline, less kind of weight on your back, whatever, until you can kind of find a steady state session that you're able to execute and recover from, and then start to very periodically bump it up, just in the way that you would periodize, let's say, a long run progression there. So that's how you start to integrate that hiking into your overall run training. And then the final piece of it is, for most hikes, is your carrying gear. So you have to think about that as part of your hike training, where you can't just hike on, let's say, like a hike on max interval, max incline on the tread, covering the time, whatever, and then not think about the weight that's going to be on your back. You have to include the weight. So it looks a little bit silly, but whether you're inside, outside, etc., you got to throw on the pack. You got to figure out how much weight you're going to be carrying and mimic that in your training in order to get ready. Our final question here, and a great one, is I'm working on finding paces, or let me rephrase that. If I'm working on finding paces, is it better to overshoot fast or undershoot slow? Having a hard time finding half marathon pace. I imagine the answer is just practice, but any other tips? So there are tips. The answer, practice is good, but there are tips here. So in general, especially thinking about half marathon pace, I would shoot my, if you're gonna miss, I would kind of miss low. I would kind of miss low, and as the interval progressed, try to like speed up a little bit and find it. Ultimately, over the course of a workout, that's going to set you up to be much more successful than overshooting the pace time after time and then having to kind of back down into it, where it starts to kind of become an overwhelming thing. Maybe not too much right now early, but as we get deeper into these workouts and the workouts get longer, you want to come in low and build up to it over the course of time. My best tip for practicing pace, however, because you're not just naturally good at it. It's not something you just like jump out like know how to do without practice, but is using a measured course, if you will. And so what I mean by this is this. So let's start with a track 400 meter oval. 1/4 mile is the duration of a track. So when I think about a track, and let's say I want to run a 10-minute mile, I break that down by 4. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds a lap. That means I need to be at the 200 meter mark, which is the halfway mark of the track, at 1 minute and 15 seconds. I need to be at the 100 meter mark of the track at 45 seconds to stay on track. So I'm not checking my watch at that point for pace. I'm checking for time. And so I'm checking in every 100 meters to kind of see, am I at 44? Am I at 48? Am I at 42? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little kind of micro adjustment there, because I'm going to check in again in another 100 meters and say like, all right, I need to focus on running this next 100 meter segment either a little bit faster or a little bit slower than I did the last one. So I'm not worried about my mile time. I'm worried about these 100 meter splits that are going to kind of keep me on track during that time. So very easy on a track. Track is awesome for this. It's very clear where you are. You have a clear line of sight to the other side of it. Easy to stay on track. There's not always a track available, so you can do this on the road as well. And it's on the 100 meter marker, it gets a little bit tricky, but here's what I would do. I would pick a known starting spot, like the same mailbox every time. And as I was doing warm-ups, I would run back and forth on a 1 mile stretch. And as I went out, I would look at the 1/4 mile splits. And so when I hit a 1/4 mile, I would be looking at the exact landmark that I was at. And as I hit a 1/2 mile, I'd be looking at the exact landmark, whether it's a lamppost, a funny looking tree, etc. Those would be the things I'd be trying to clock. And as I kind of came back the other direction on my warm up, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd be double checking the distance, making sure that that is roughly a 1/4 mile. Then when I go into my intervals, I would be shooting for that same thing. I'd be looking for the 2-minute and 30-second per quarter mile interval. So I'm not waiting till the end of my mile to figure out where I need to make pace adjustments. I'm doing it on the quarter mile split, but I'm not checking my watch for the pace because that can ping pong all over the place. What I'm doing is I'm trying to focus on my effort. I'm trying to make sure I'm running those even 2:30 splits per quarter mile. And that's how you'll start to like really get dialed into the pacing level there, as opposed to just kind of ping-ponging along as your Garmin adjusts. So sounds a little bit challenging. It's actually quite easy. You just have to practice that a few times as well. Once again, it doesn't come naturally. It's not something we're just inherently good at, but you can get better and you can improve, and it will absolutely help your running over a long period. Well, otherwise, that's all for week 2. Thanks as always for joining me here on this Friday evening. Have an amazing finish to week 1, and I can't wait to see you next week. Have a great one.